Whether you drive a car,
need a car,
or just occasionally bum a ride with friends,
you've come to the right place.
Join Jill and Tom as they break down everything that's going on in the auto world.
New car reviews,
Shopping tips,
driving green,
electric cars,
classic cars,
and plenty of great guests.
This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, this is the Car Stuff Podcast. I am Tom Appel. Thanks for joining us today. When you get a chance, check us out at consumerguide.com. That's where all the good stuff lives. You can check out our Best Buy list if you're car shopping, and you can listen to the podcast right there on our homepage, though we strongly encourage you to subscribe and leave glowing reviews instead. In studio with us for the first time in 7-8 years, Jill Ciminillo. How are you?
It feels like 7 or 8 years. I'm doing well. I think I spent my first weekend at home this past weekend in like 4 weeks. And I actually cleaned and slept and did home things.
Showered? Did you shower?
Once. I showered once.
All right. You are a North American Car of the Year juror. You are Chief Medical Officer at Pickup Truck Plus. I lost my voice. SUV Talk. And your freelance work can be found all over the internet.
Yes.
Right.
Chief Medical Examiner. Officer. Got it.
Chief Medical Officer. CMO.
Got it. I do always carry like Imodium, antihistamine, and Advil. That would be the extent of my medical capabilities.
Advil would be, I don't travel with it, but Advil I find myself needing once I get the knee fixed, I won't need the Advil.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
You know what I don't get?
What?
Headaches.
Lucky.
Yeah, not a thing.
I get a lot of dehydration headaches.
Do you?
I do. And I drink a lot of water, so I don't know where they're coming from. I am a very salty sweater, so that's probably where they're coming from. Yeah.
I'm writing that down. You're a salty sweater.
I am a salty sweater.
There is, you've been, what did you drive? Where you been? What are you doing?
I feel like I've been to California, South Carolina, Michigan, California. I've been a lot of places.
Oh.
Let's see. So I drove the Chevy Silverado EV, the Chevy Equinox EV, which we're going to be talking about in a minute. I drove
momentarily.
the Genesis GV80, the Mazda CX-70, the GMC Acadia, and I was on Rebel Rally training in California, and I just got back from driving the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster.
Interesting that they had an event finally.
Yeah.
Like Ineos warming up to the media.
Yes.
And no one cares but us. But they are treating the media the way other manufacturers treat the media.
Yes.
And we have access to their product, and
Yes.
we appreciate that.
Yes. And did you know,
Unlike
Tom,
Tesla.
Yes. Did you know? But, I mean, Ineos is not electric, so keep that in mind. People keep saying, I want an affordable electric car when they're talking about Ineos, and I'm like, you realize this is a gasoline vehicle, right? It's a non sequitur.
I guess because it's a startup.
Right.
Who does a gasoline startup anymore?
Ineos. So Ineos is a fascinating company. I just have to tell you, I spent some time with their marketing people, the PR people, the product people, and Ineos. It's funny. One of the fellows I talked to who's like, Ineos is probably the largest company you've never heard of.
Right.
It is actually a chemical company.
Chemical and plastics,
and,
out of the UK.
Yeah, out of the UK. They employ 26,000 people in 29 different countries. And, I mean, it's just, they have 26 different industries that they touch.
People should go back and talk to our interview with, and I forget, what was his name?
Oh, Greg Clark.
Greg Clark. Was he there?
He was there, and
okay.
I got to drive with him, and oh my gosh, he's a great guy. He's so, he was so entertaining on our podcast. He is just as entertaining and, just real in person.
So Ineos, and we should mention this now, is basically an homage, a tribute to the original Defender.
Yes.
And the folks at Ineos were sort of bummed that Defender was going away. The Defender we have now is kind of modern, kind of sleek.
And it's a unibody construction.
Yeah.
Bleh.
So there's a lot there that traditional off-roaders and just Land Rover fans would be disappointed, no longer part of the equation.
Yes.
So very well backed financially, a group of people said, we're going to build our own.
Yep.
And Ineos is a company that's very well run, very well respected. So if they do some sort of spin-off company, we expect it to probably be run pretty well,
Yep.
and that seems to be the case.
Yeah, and so I don't think this is going anywhere. It is a startup, but I mean they have the SUV, which they call a station wagon, and then they have the Quartermaster, which is the pickup truck. And I don't know, it was such a fascinating experience. And we drove at the Mama Spring Rally, we drove the Ineos station wagon SUV, and the steering is a little bit interesting because instead of rack and pinion steering, it's recirculating ball steering.
That's old school, and it's better
totally
for off-road.
It is a lot better
because you'll
for
get less kickback.
Yeah, and it's just, but it's very, very different. You have to add a lot more input, and so for people who've only ever driven rack and pinion steering, it's a little bit different.
Interesting, they even mentioned that.
Oh, they made a big deal of it.
Because recirculating ball is kind of inside baseball.
But they made a big deal about it, and they talked about the robustness and the durability of that specific kind of steering, which is why they chose it. Because I think in so many of the preliminary reviews, I know I did a review of the SUV at the Spring Rally. So many of the reviews talked about the steering and that it was weird. And so, okay, this is why it's weird. And they're like, it's not necessarily weird. It's just different. It's not something you're used to.
So people could feel the difference.
Oh, 100%. You can 100%. I mean, you can 100% feel the difference. I mean, immediately feel the difference.
Yeah, I mean, recirculating ball is just an old power steering system that goes back to the 60s.
Yeah.
Maybe the 50s. I don't know. It's very old technology, but it's very robust. Mm-hmm. And it's great for power.
Yeah.
Like for sort of effortless Cadillac Eldorado, easy turning power. But I had never considered it as an off-road thing. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to get the kickback, and you're going to get the additional robustness. Yeah. So that's very cool. Anyway, are you gonna write more about this? Or
I've got my written review on Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and I've got a video also. So Pickup Truck Talk. Bleh, I got to get this out. PickupTruckTalk.com, and then the YouTube Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk.
Cool. Big news from Jeep. You saw this?
I did.
This is interesting for a bunch of reasons because we got in the sense that Jeep was sort of going through a period of a mea culpa, if you will, about having introduced vehicles that may not have been as Jeepy as you might have expected.
Right.
And the Gladiator, the Compass, and the Cherokee, kind of those bottom end unibody built in another country vehicles, sort of watered down the brand.
Gladiator isn't unibody.
I didn't mean Gladiator. I meant Renegade.
Yes.
Yeah. No, the Gladiator is full-time all-American Jeep. But Jeep is killing the Renegade. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to confuse Renegade and Gladiator for the rest of the show. But that was their smallest, their least affordable, or most affordable vehicle. I just need a reset. But but they're bringing out an EV.
Yes.
To be called Renegade.
Yes.
With a starting price of $25,000.
Yes.
Interesting.
You know what? I think that's fascinating because $25,000 seems to be the holy grail for affordable EVs.
Well, this is a special bit of affordable because it's going to qualify probably for the tax credit.
Right.
So are we talking about a $17,500 EV?
Or is it $25,000 with the tax credit? I
well,
don't think they've
know.
clarified.
And that's the thing about when people start to give us prices for EVs. Yeah. Because that's what Chevy was dilly-dallying about with the Equinox EV. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know where that was really going to be priced. But they did finally release a price for the 1LT, the least expensive version, and that's $34,995. Yeah. And it does qualify for the tax credit. So it's under $30K, actually comfortably by a couple of grand. But the Jeep is interesting. They do sell a front-wheel drive EV in Europe. Mm. I forgot the name. Is it Avenger? I think it's the Avenger. It was introduced at an auto show recently.
Well, I thought it was like the Recon. Isn't that it?
Recon is going to be the Wrangler-like EV that we're going to get in the U.S.
Okay. I thought the Recon was the small.
Yeah.
But, okay.
And there's that in Wagoneer S. Those are the EVs that we're getting here.
And they've revealed the Wagoneer S.
Yep.
But I haven't officially, I think, revealed the Recon yet then.
No.
Yeah.
But we've seen previews. Like, didn't we see a Recon concept maybe a year ago?
Maybe.
Jeep is ready to go EV.
Jeep is ready to go EV.
At any rate.
Yeah.
So there you go. I'm looking forward to that. And that's going to be a 2027 model year vehicle. Yes. 2027. So there you go. Also, it's going to have iron phosphate batteries. No one's going to care.
Okay.
But that keeps the price down.
Yes.
You can't do that if you want big range, so there's going to be some limitations to this.
Right.
All right. I just had a conversation with a lovely young woman outside of a donut shop. Okay. Now, this sounds like it might
Like the beginnings of a joke?
the beginning of a joke, or just I'm a creepy old guy, but that is not what happened
Could be
here.
a little bit of both.
This young lady happened to work for Amazon, was driving the Amazon EDV,
Okay.
the electric vehicle. She is the fourth driver. Most of them I meet at 7-Eleven. I met her at a donut
Now
shop.
that sounds creepy.
And they're always in a hurry.
Okay.
But when I ask them if they like the Amazon EDV electric delivery vehicle, the answer is always that they love it.
Okay.
They love it like crazy.
Okay.
And they're quiet and they're quick. And I guess they handle pretty well.
And they're probably cool on a hot day like today.
Probably. But do you know what she liked about it most?
What did she like about it?
One pedal driving.
Okay.
I didn't even know that was a thing that you could do with a commercial van. I mean, I knew it was a thing you could do. I'm surprised
Right.
that they do it. But for people that don't know, tell us what that is.
So essentially one pedal driving is the art of speeding up and slowing down simply using the accelerator pedal. So
Yeah.
there's regenerative braking that happens when you lift your foot off of the accelerator. Temptation is to call it a gas pedal, but it's not a gas pedal.
I don't even know if throttle is correct.
No, I just say accelerator pedal at this
That's
point.
better.
And you just, as you lift off, like braking is implied. And so you can come to a complete stop with one pedal driving just by the amount of pressure you put on the accelerator pedal. Therefore, it is one pedal driving.
Yeah, and the Chevy Bolt was very good at that. Mm-hmm. And generally, you couldn't, no matter how good you were at it, you kind of had to hit the brake to finally bring it to a stop. But that's okay, because you still were recapturing all that energy.
Yeah.
And you were driving. If you get good at it, it's better than two-pedal driving.
It really is. And I will say Tesla, and there have been a couple of other EVs that I've driven that are complete one-pedal driving. You can bring yourself to a complete stop without touching the brake. I think maybe the Nissan Ariya might be one.
Yeah, I drove the Model Y, Robert Colangelo's Model Y, in traffic, and I never found myself, like the last few yards of stopping is kind of imprecise. So I always went for the brake pedal at the end.
Okay, yeah, because I've never driven the Model Y, but I remember in the Model S, it was fairly aggressive one pedal.
Was it? I'd never
Yeah.
driven a Model S. I drove a Model X briefly. With Tesla's permission. It was weird. All right, now let's talk.
Yes.
We were talking about affordable EVs.
Yes.
And why I think this year might be interesting for EVs, and we might see better EV sales than people think. You drove the Equinox EV.
I did.
Interesting thing about Chevy and GMC, they're not going with other names for their EV products. Like Nissan didn't call the Rogue EV, they called it the Ariya.
Yeah.
Now, it's a different vehicle, but it fits in that exact same spot, except that it's an EV. But tell us about the Equinox, because I think this is a big deal.
You know what? It is a big deal because I would say this is as close to perfect of an EV as I've ever driven. There is just one thing wrong with it. And I think you know what that thing is.
Yeah, you've got eight seconds.
No Apple CarPlay.
On this topic. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. But other than that, like, if you do not need Apple CarPlay, if you're an Android user, or if you can figure out your way around it, the range is amazing. The actual ride and handling is really good for a small EV. They have...
Now, when we say small, it's not that small.
It's not that small, but
right?
a compact
It's a compact
SUV.
crossover, so it's
Yeah.
about as roomy as a RAV4 or a CR-V. Is
Yeah.
it? Yeah?
Yeah, it's maybe a little smaller.
Okay.
But I mean, good cargo space. Good for me. I'm the size of an average 10-year-old. Good second row seat space. But the ride and handling is amazing. The visibility is really good. They have a really large screen that is very visible and really well done, from the gauge cluster all the way through to the infotainment. And this is the new operating system that they are using, and you're going to see this in all the new GM EVs moving forward, and it's a Google operating system. So you can pair or log into your Google account. So you have to log in with your Gmail, and then you have access to all of the things that you log into with your Google account, like Waze, Spotify, Google Podcasts, that kind of Audible, that kind of stuff. And then you can access that through the infotainment screen or through verbal commands.
And your email too, right? Will it read your email to you?
It will not read your email.
It won't.
At least not that. I'll be honest, I didn't try, but I don't think so.
Okay. So the system that is denying us CarPlay, does it work pretty well?
The system as itself does work well. So one of the things that I really like about the Google Maps and the Google operating system connected to the car, especially in an EV, is your range becomes that much more accurate because the system is talking to the car and it's like, how much battery life do I have left? All right, what kind of traffic is on the road? Okay, well, when you get to your destination, you're going to have 84% of your battery left. And it's really accurate.
I'm confused. Your range is more accurate than what?
Like if you were using Apple CarPlay and you had Apple Maps in, it wouldn't say, "Oh, when you arrive at your destination, you'll have 84%."
Oh, okay.
Of your battery.
So it's less of a more accurate. It's about getting that information at all.
Yeah, and the Google operating system operates more in percentages than you will arrive with 200 miles of range. And to me, I think talking in percentages when you're talking about battery life is much more. I don't want to say accurate, but it's much more acceptable in a way than talking about range. Because you can arrive at home with 30% of your battery and maybe that's only 50 miles of range. Well, when you see 50 miles of range, you kind of freak out. But when you see 30% of your battery left, you're like, I've got 20 more percent of my battery to go before I limp home.
One of the things I've thought too, and I'm still remembering driving like a 76 Pontiac Ventura, was you just had a really large looking gauge with a needle. Mm-hmm. That meant nothing.
Yeah.
And not only did it mean nothing, it was super inaccurate in the last quarter anyway.
Right.
Like it seemed like you went through the first 2/3 really, or 2 or 3 quarters really fast. Mm-hmm. And then it just lingered forever in the last quarter, giving you this false sense of security.
Yeah.
And I think that the move to digital readouts for range are just confusing people.
Yeah.
And forcing you to think about range in a new way.
Right. Well, and that's why I think percentage is a much better way to think about how much space you have left. And by having the Google Maps with the active traffic reports that are on the screen, combining that with the weather, with the vehicle, the way you drive, so the vehicle will learn how you drive. So then it just, if you're trying to make a drive from Chicago to Indianapolis and you plug in an address, it will give you, you'll arrive with 30% of your battery left, and then you will actually arrive with 30%.
It's good to know what you're going to have left.
Yeah, because then you don't freak out.
Well, you can also plan.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's,
I got to go someplace where I go in the morning. Maybe I should plug in before I get there.
Right. And the fact that it's accurate makes you freak out less. Like I've driven a lot of EVs that'll say, you'll get there with whatever. And then, you're limping into a charging station 60 miles before your destination. So I think that pairing the system with the car makes it more accurate than...
So are you softening on this?
No.
Oh.
No. If it doesn't have Apple CarPlay, I'm not buying the vehicle. Okay. I mean, that's a deal breaker for me. I think it's a deal breaker for a lot of people.
See, I just don't care that much.
I know you don't, but you're also of an age.
But it's not just that. It is that the vehicle is gone. The consumer vehicle has gone 120 years, and we've had CarPlay on cars for like 10 years. It can't be that important.
But here's the thing. It is so clunky to try and use your Apple phone through the system. So I don't know how you drive or how you operate.
Very poorly.
But when I get into a car, and if I'm on my way here, I like to listen, and it's a 45-minute drive, so I like to get some podcasts in. Well, in Apple CarPlay, it's really easy to pull up your podcasts, click the button, scroll through what you want, select what you want. But I do all of my podcasts through iTunes or Apple Podcasts.
I would argue that you are getting old and unwilling to change. That's what I think.
Because you need to have access to the things that you're using on your phone more easily. So what this is going to make me do is pick up my phone.
How did we drive 10 years ago?
We didn't listen to podcasts because they didn't exist. But the other thing that's a problem is text messaging. So if I've got 10 text messages on my phone and I get into the car and I don't have Apple CarPlay, there is no way for me to access those. There's no easy way for me to access those messages without touching my phone. However, if somebody text message you while you were in the car, it'll pop up on the screen and then you can play it. But it's like anything that's old, your voicemails, your text messages, you can't access them.
I remember moments ago when I said we weren't going to talk about this.
But then you asked me questions.
I suspect that there will be fixes and plugins and other apps.
There's got to be something
to get around these complaints. And actually, probably what General Motors is doing right now is making a list of these and trying to figure out how to fix them. I bet you by the mid-cycle update in 3 years on this, all these problems go away.
It could be. And it's really funny because I sat down with the product expert for the Google operating system, and I asked all of these questions, and it was like she'd never heard these questions before. And I'm like, clearly somebody has asked these questions before me.
Probably.
And then
why would she admit that it's an issue?
Well, and then I put out a couple of TikToks on this, and the next morning at breakfast, I'm getting myself coffee, and I turn around, and 3 product people are like, "Whoom," and they wanted to talk to me about my videos, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm happy to have this conversation, but I did not state anything that was incorrect." And I'm just trying to show people this is what life is like without Apple CarPlay.
But here's the thing about that. What is it? 60% of drivers prefer Apple or own Apple, and the rest pretty much own Android.
I honestly don't know what the number is, but I have
It's about half, maybe a little bit more than half. But once you're down to half, then you have the people who care is a percentage of that half. I don't think the people as outraged as you represent that many people.
Judging by the comments that I got on my video, there are a lot of people who care. And also, I heard a stat, and I have no idea where it came from, so I could be completely making it up.
That's the best kind of stat.
But it was something like 80% of people who buy EVs and luxury vehicles have an iPhone.
What percent?
Like 80%.
80% of luxury vehicle
and EV owners.
Well, they're expensive.
So they're like, the people who would buy an EV have an iPhone. And again, don't know where that stat came from, but I think that more people care than you think. I think I got one comment on my one comment on my video that has a lot of views that said, "I'm an Android owner. I don't care." One comment. Everybody else was very outraged.
When we talk about future General Motors EVs, we'll just say, go back to the Equinox episode to talk about the iPhone issue.
Yeah.
Summarize the vehicle, because we kind of lost that we were talking about the Equinox here.
Yes. So compact SUV EV from General Motors, Chevrolet. It is similar to the gasoline-powered version, but completely different, if that makes sense. Compact size.
Yeah, completely unrelated.
Yeah, completely unrelated. But it has
General Motors EVs, except for the Bolt, are all on new Ultium architecture.
Yeah.
So they're not related directly.
No, not related directly, but has some visual similarities. But really attractive interior design, comfortable seats, which is big for General Motors, and just really great range, really good powertrain, and very affordable price.
So I've got range here at 285 to 319 miles. I've got horsepower from 213 to 288, and base prices from $34,995 up to a staggering $47,795, but you don't need to order that model.
No.
That's the 3RS, which is pretty sporty.
Yeah.
There you go. So you like the vehicle.
I loved the vehicle.
All right, we're going to take a break, and after the break, we're going to talk to Joe Ligo, director and producer of the last Independent Automaker, about American Motors. And remember, I was upset that you didn't know who Uhura was. But people are forgetting American Motors.
Yes.
And it was a really big deal for a really long time, and it's kind of a shame that the memories are fading. So we're going to come out of the break to play a commercial, the trailer for the film.
Okay.
All right, let's take a break.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
There's an old saying in the car business that the best way out of any problem is to sell more cars.
Your car was a defining feature. People bought cars every other year.
American Motors had to think out of the box. We did some pretty wild and crazy things there.
My first car was a 69 Javelin.
The Gremlin, the Hornet, and the Sportabout.
Marlin.
The Matador.
The Metropolitan.
The Eagle.
Who'd ever dreamed you'd build a car like the Gremlin?
They were a little bit edgier back in those days.
The 1982 American Motors Spirit.
The Pacer's a classic.
I thought that was like a space shuttle.
Then they had a board meeting. We're going to buy a Jeep.
We wrote the book on four-wheel drive.
Ramblers and Ambassadors.
Rambler was the number 3 selling car in America. That was extraordinary.
When they were building 300,000 cars a year, they were profitable. When they got down to 180,000, they were losing buckets of money.
American Motors President Gerald Myers announced a tentative agreement between American Motors and Renault of France.
The French had been pouring money into American Motors, and it was going right out the bottom in red ink.
We were fighting long odds, trying to beat the big guys.
I'm sure there was a lot of decisions made behind closed doors where the carpets are thick and the chairs are soft and the cigar smoke's heavy that we never knew about.
It was the biggest shock of my life.
I know, we got screwed, that's all.
All the years there and everything's gone. This was the end of an era.
American Motors was a business, but it was also like your family.
Those good industrial jobs made the American dream for them.
It's the highlight of my career.
American Motors is unique, never to be replicated again. That's a one-timer.
All right, that was the trailer for the last independent automaker, a film I cannot wait, a documentary I cannot wait to watch. Now, you've mentioned you're a little bit younger than me, Jill. You've never been in an AMC?
No.
Played a big role in my childhood. With us today is the director and producer of the last independent automaker, Joe Ligo. Joe, how are you?
I am doing well. It's so great to be with you. I actually just got back from the American Motors Owners Association, their yearly convention. This year was in Virginia, so I'm riding the AMC high coming off that weekend. As
I mentioned to you on Twitter, you were poking around a Gremlin, which was a tiny vehicle. I somehow got squeezed into the back seat of one of those things. This might have been like in 1982, but I was a lighter, smaller man at the time.
Yeah, I looked at the back seat of one, and I don't know how anybody over the age of 5 or 6 could get into the back seat of that car. They're just, the legroom is non-existent. Joe, I guess that's why they sold a base model that had no back seat to save money. I think it would be a much better space for packages rather than people.
I think so. Like the last of the third generation Corvettes, you could just stuff stuff in there from the passenger seat. It was just, there was no hatch. Mm-hmm. So, Joe, American Motors, why do we care?
Well, it's funny. They seem to have fallen through the gaps history-wise, but by the numbers, they were a major player in the automotive space for the better part of 30 years. I mean, this is a company that, by the end of its run had built around 12 million vehicles. And, I think we tend to think of it as little because GM, Ford, and Chrysler were so big. But I think by scale, it's little, but certainly, it is a major player in the automotive space for many, many years. And like I said, I mean, at one point it employed close to 30,000 people. And if that was one of your jobs at that company, that was a big deal. And so that's kind of, I feel like they've been left to fall through the cracks in automotive history. And it's a really great story that needs told.
The trailer gives me shivers. I can't wait to watch this. Tell us why we're calling AMC an independent automaker.
Sure. So around, I guess, even before World War II, but even more so after World War II, to distinguish automakers that weren't the big three from the big three, the industry sort of developed the term independent, which meant companies like Hudson, Nash, Packard, Studebaker, smaller automakers that were still big players, but they weren't operating at the volume of, say, a Chrysler or a Ford. And the reason the name independent, what that means is that, GM was a conglomerate of brands of separate companies that had merged together, as was Chrysler, and Ford less so, but still, that was how journalists distinguished, the same way that we would say, a Japanese automaker, a German automaker, an American automaker. Back in the day, they would say, it was the big three, or it was an independent, was how they would describe that.
Now, AMC is an interesting brand only because the brand came slowly into use after the company was formed. Can you tell us a little bit about that history and that track and what companies became AMC?
Yes. So just the crash course for folks is that our series starts after World War II, there's a variety of independent automakers, and they quickly begin to realize that after World War II, they cannot compete at scale with GM, Ford, and Chrysler. They just don't have the volume and the advantages that come with that. And so different independents talk to each other and end up merging, and American Motors is formed through the merger of the Hudson Motor Car Company and the Nash Kelvinator Corporation. And so Nash Kelvinator built cars and appliances. Hudson built cars. They merged together, and rather than call themselves Hudson Nash Kelvinator with a bunch of hyphens, they name American Motors Corporation. And so as American Motors starts out, it is only selling Hudson and Nash brands. And that begins to evolve where a model called the Rambler, the Nash Rambler, gets promoted into a brand. So Rambler goes from being a model to a full brand, and the Hudson and Nash brands are sort of phased out. And then in the mid to late 60s, we see the Rambler brand phased out in favor of the American Motors brand, which then sort of slowly becomes called AMC. And so it's interesting. Every 5 to 10 years, the company kind of started to rebrand its product line, which I think maybe created some consumer confusion, but also for historians creates a lot of semantics about, what is the proper name for a car. But if you're one of those folks that, my grandpa had a Rambler, or my aunt had a Gremlin, or, my great grandma had a Nash, they're all connected. They're all relative to each other.
As Mitt Romney says in the trailer, and people should watch the trailer, not just listen to it, Rambler at one point was the third best-selling brand in the United States. It's actually incredible to me.
Yes, and for context, Mitt Romney's father, George Romney, was president and CEO of the company before deciding to run for governor of Michigan and getting the family into politics. But yes, there was a period in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, where if you looked at the automotive sales figures, it would be Ford, Chevy, Ford, and then in a distant third, Rambler. And, Rambler was beating out big names like Pontiac, Dodge, Plymouth.
That's incredible.
And you're right. And at least one or two conspiracy theorists think that GM fudged the numbers for Pontiac a few times because they were so upset that Rambler was beating out Pontiac. I can't prove that, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing. In the early 60s, it was amazing the number of cars they were selling.
My full disclosure, my dad had a 68 Rambler American, a vehicle he bought used, and that served the family very well. For people who don't care, it had the 258 inline six. But he had that a long time. And Dad, if you're listening, remind me, but I thought that vehicle was very reliable. So coming out of this, Rambler died when, like 69, 68?
Yeah, so Rambler kind of got demoted as more and more models got rebranded as, 1 year it was the Rambler ambassador, and then the next year it was the American Motors ambassador. And that started to happen until finally they were down to just one model, the Rambler American, which, yes, 1969 was the last year for that. They just called it the Rambler that year because there were no other models. And then that was replaced effectively by the AMC Hornet in 1970. So, yeah, 69 was the last year, although overseas markets continued to use the Rambler name on various products.
Okay.
But, that's a whole other ball game there.
So I sort of recognize the early 70s as sort of the benchmark lineup for AMC as AMC. And you had the Hornet, the Gremlin, I think the Javelin, the Matador, and the Ambassador. Was that a successful lineup? Was AMC successful at that time?
It is certainly the most memorable lineup of the collector market, in terms of the ones people remember of, I had one of those, my family had one of those. Yes, I think models like Hornet, Gremlin, Javelin, those are cars that people remember. The 70s were an up and down period. 70, 71, the company was spending a lot of money launching new models, but by 72, 73, and even into 74, they were rocketing. I mean, sales were great. Profits were high. Even through the oil crisis of 1973 actually caused sales to go up because they sold a lot of Gremlins and Hornets because they were smaller cars that got better gas mileage. And so 72, 3, and 4 were all pretty good years for the company. They sold a lot of cars during that period.
So that begs the question, like, why did AMC go away? Like, what happened? If they were successful, they were able to compete with the likes of General Motors and Ford, and then all of a sudden, they are no more.
Yeah, and so like most companies that go out of business, it's never just one thing.
Right.
But that's a great question. I'd say it's chronic inconsistency. They would have a product line that worked. They would have a product line that worked, and then they would get almost a little bit too big for their britches and spend too much money, and then launch a new model that didn't pan out, and it would be this thing where they would try and compete head to head with the big three, but they didn't have the kind of volume that they could get their costs down low enough. And so, I mean, a big part of it is models like the Pacer, which the Pacer was very successful its first year and a half, and then sales kind of tanked. And the problem was that the Pacer didn't share components with a lot of other vehicles, and so it was very expensive to produce. The Hornet line had a station wagon, 2 sedans, a 2-door and a 4-door. It had a hatchback. All those models could share body panels, share engines, transmissions, suspension components. And so that made them very cheap to build, whereas, the Pacer, they only came in 2 body styles, and there's a limited appeal with kind of a weird-looking hatchback and a weird-looking station wagon. It just didn't cover as much of the market. So I'd say, to answer your question, the biggest thing was, they couldn't sell enough cars to make enough money to design new cars to keep selling. And so that's a tough spiral to go into as a car company. And, the big thing was that, they would have periods like the early 60s or like the early 70s where they were really successful. But then when they were successful, their capital expenditures started to get out of control, and that's where they would get in trouble.
Joe, I want to talk about your movie in a moment, but I have one more question for you. Moving ahead to the end of the decade, I was old enough to be paying attention at the time and to think that these cars were really cool. But AMC rolled out the Eagle lineup, and the Eagle lineup was profoundly interesting because it paved the path for Subaru, for example, where you had these all-wheel drive vehicles that were kind of upmarket and selling for premium price. How did Eagle not save AMC? Because it seemed like that was like the panacea there.
Yeah, it's this, and we talk about the creation of the Eagle in the documentary. It's really fascinating because it was kind of just a wild idea that an engineer had that he kind of worked on in secret because he was afraid AMC management wouldn't approve it. But yeah, it's a brilliant idea. It's this idea of building a 4-wheel drive car that really bridges the gap between, an SUV, which at the time all SUVs based. So it's really bridging the gap between a pickup truck, which is kind of loud and crude and uncomfortable, and a passenger car, which is quiet and smooth. And it really is a brilliant idea. 2 things that really hurt the Eagle were, one, it was launched into like one of the worst recessions in American history in 1980. Interest rates are 18%. Inflation is double-digit inflation. Gas prices, it's the second oil crisis. And so that really hurt all car sales. And so that kind of made it a hard launch. And then part of it was that the Eagle just started to become, they didn't have the money to update it.
Yeah.
And so it needed a refreshed body. It needed fuel injection and airbags and anti-lock brakes and the kind of things that AMC wasn't willing to spend capital on. And then honestly, probably one of the biggest threats to the Eagle was that 1984 brought the launch of the XJ Jeep Cherokee and Wagoneer. And those were just so incredibly good. If you were at an AMC dealership and you were looking at an Eagle or you were looking at an XJ, I mean, the XJ was just an incredible vehicle. And it's a shame because the Eagles are great too. But the XJ was just such a good vehicle and so appealing and so modern and stylish. I think it would make it really hard to be an Eagle in a showroom next to an XJ Jeep. They're just such an incredible vehicle when they came out.
Yeah, it's a bummer because the Eagle wagon was so cool, especially two-tone with the really great look at wheels. I mean, it absolutely predicted the Subaru Outback. And they totally could have, if they could have refreshed the body a little bit and given it, the fuel-injected 4-liter that was in the same engine that was in the Jeeps that the Eagle never got. I mean, that car could have been, a huge
huge success. And there's even sketches and drawings that they were thinking about updating it, but the money wasn't there at the time, which is a real shame.
It's an incredible story. Joe, tell us about your documentary, how that's going, and when we get to watch that.
Yes. So The Last Independent Automaker is the name of our documentary series. It is 6 episodes that are about half an hour each. We're currently in the process of hammering out a distribution agreement for public television. So if you're a fan of PBS, you should be able to watch it on your local PBS station. The plan is to get it on public television in the spring of 2025, and it will be available there. And then also PBS has a streaming app for smart devices, TVs, etc. So if you don't want to if you don't have an antenna, you can watch it on the app, and we'll make it available online as well. So that's going to, and it'll be available nationally. So that's great. We're very excited.
Now there is a Last Independent Automaker. There's some social media, right? You're on Twitter and Facebook?
Yes. So I, Joe Ligo, am on Twitter, but yes, we have a page for the film American Motors, The Last Independent Automaker, and that's where most of our updates come out. So we strongly encourage people to follow us there so that we can tell them about, check your local listings. Here's where you can watch. Here's where, we constantly update on our progress, post behind-the-scenes photos of what we've been filming and that sort of thing.
I am compelled to thank you for making this. I'm so excited about this.
Well, thank you. We're very thankful. We still have a GoFundMe campaign open, and that's been part of what's allowed us to do this is the generosity of the car community. People have really come forth and said this is something they want to see and have donated to our project, and that's a big part of what's made this possible is folks like that who've supported our work.
All right, we will link to that as well. Joe, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk about AMCs all day, so thanks for having me.
All right. That was Joe Ligo. He's the director and producer of The Last Independent Automaker. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, for the first time in a long time, Joe.
Quiz time.
Quiz time.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, we're back. This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast. I'm Tom. She's Jill. Jill in studio for the first time since 1987. How are you?
I am doing well.
We skipped my social media stuff, but that's okay. Let's talk about yours.
Okay, so me first and then you?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. So I'm on social media. I've been very prolific lately on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.
It never ends.
It never ends. Threads, all of the things, at Jill Simonello. Lots of information out right now on the GMC Acadia and the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster.
I was going to ask you a question about the Acadia. Your written report of that is on consumerguide.com.
Yes.
And I had a question about the vehicle, and I forgot what it was. Oh, I do know. Are there more trim levels coming later?
I don't think so.
So there's an SLE, SLT, and then there's AT4, off-roady.
And then Denali. Yeah, they simplified their lineup for this model year. And for those who are familiar with the current gen Acadia, it is much smaller than the Acadia that is out now. They made it longer, wider, bigger. It has 80% more cargo space behind the third row, so a lot more storage space.
Interesting they went back to that. What had happened originally when they launched the vehicle way back in 2010 or something like that, it was the same size as the Traverse, so it was big and long.
Yeah, the Traverse, the Enclave, and the Saturn...
I'm not going to remember now.
It wasn't the View. It was whatever was bigger than the View. But yeah, so...
Outlook.
Yeah.
Outlook.
But there was a Saturn version. So there were 4 vehicles all built on the same platform. Yeah. And they all... Saturn went away, but the Enclave and Traverse stayed large, and the Acadia went small.
It went to the Blazer.
Yeah.
Architecture, basically.
And it's... I don't know that it did as well. And so they made it bigger. The customers were saying they wanted more cargo space, more space with bigger third row.
I thought that the second generation Acadia was wildly underappreciated. I liked it a lot. And if you got an off-roady version, you got a better off-road system.
Yeah.
Does the new AT4 have an improved all-wheel drive system available?
I think it does. I have to be honest with you. I did not drive the last generation Acadia.
I don't think anyone did.
Yeah, but they took us through with the AT4. They took us through like some off-road situations, and they had a course set up with moguls and off-camber driving, and you were like wheels up in the air, and it did really well. Didn't get stuck.
Yeah, it's not a vehicle I think many people are actually going to take off-road, and it looks a little long to be good off-road, but who knows? It's the kind of thing that you will take to a place to be able to camp, like to get to a trailhead. You're not going to, drive the Rubicon Trail with it, but you can do some mild off-roading in some stressful situations. And that's good looking. Did you get to the Simonello part?
At Jill Simonello, or
right.
You can use the hashtag Car du Jour. But like I said, lots of information on the Acadia and the Ineos right now on my social media.
All right, quiz time. Are you ready?
Am I ever ready?
I forgot to ask you this. This is episode 225. Is there any feng shui to that? Does that seem important?
225? No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Okay.
222 we didn't acknowledge. You weren't here.
222.
You were off gallivanting.
Well, I gallivant a lot.
Today's quiz ready? Less than $60,000? Question mark.
Okay. All right.
I don't even think I need to explain that to you.
Nope.
But there are 5 questions plus a bonus question. You need 3
yes.
total, including the bonus question. You need 3 total yeses, correct answers for a win.
And I will say I have been taking the quizzes at home, and I've been doing well.
That's what you say.
I've been... like I would lie. I've been doing well.
All right. Well, good. Now you can do well as well.
Okay.
All right. You're back. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The 2024 Ford Explorer King Ranch.
Okay.
Is that less than $60,000? That's the King. It's stuffed full of
stuff.
Of boot-smelling leather.
It's stuffed full of stuff. And really nice accents and trimming pieces, named after King Ranch in Texas, right?
I don't know where that is.
I think it's in Texas.
But yeah, King Ranch leather. Handsome interior.
And the question is it less than?
Yes. Is the base price of a Ford Explorer King Ranch less than $60,000?
No.
It is.
Oh.
Yeah, not by much. $56,765, and then the upmarket Platinum is just a few $100 more.
Got it.
$57,310. Jill.
Wah, wah.
You have no points.
I know.
All right. The 2024 Ford Mustang Dark Horse Coupe. There is no convertible. I don't know why I put the coupe down. Is that under $60,000? Base price, no options.
No.
It is not. You're on the board. It's $61,830. You're on the board with 1. All right. The 2024 BMW 530i, the cheapest 5 Series BMW. Can you still get in a BMW 5 Series for less than $60,000, not including tax?
I'm going to say yes.
Just barely. $58,895.
Yeah, I'm like, this is your bare bones, no heated seats, no adaptive cruise control, no, like, probably you have to use a window crank.
Also, importantly, no all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And most 5 Series now are sold with all-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive.
I know a guy at the health club's a BMW salesman, says you cannot give away a BMW car without all-wheel drive anymore.
Yeah.
You need the all-wheel drive in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so you got 2 points.
Woo!
I'll just write that down here. All right, 2024 Mazda CX-9S Premium Plus. Under $60,000? Please deeply consider Mazda's push-up market.
Yeah,
and this is the top trim level.
That is exactly what is on my brain.
It is not the plug-in hybrid.
I'm going to say yes.
Just barely, $57,325. You've already won.
Yay!
And then finally, this is a great one, the 2024 Chevrolet Tahoe LS. Base Tahoe, that would be rear drive, base trim level. Does it come in under $60,000?
Yes.
Just barely, $58,195. You've got 4 today. Nice
and you
job.
thought I was fudging, saying I've done well.
I have no idea how honest you were.
I am nothing if not honest.
You're just under a lot of scrutiny right now. You really can't.
I am painfully honest.
All right. Jill founded in 1964 the Jackson 5, a musical group responsible...
From Gary, Indiana?
Yes, from Gary, Indiana. Responsible for such hits as ABC, I Want You Back, and Dancing Machine. I need you to tell me which of the following was not a member of the original Jackson 5.
Okay, and this is 1964?
No. I mean, I don't know when this list of lineup was, but this is the original lineup of members. So I guess it's 64.
Okay.
They would have been...
Way before my time.
Oh, well, yes. This is a cultural question.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before my time, really. Tito Jackson, Jermaine Jackson, Jackie Jackson, or Manfred Jackson. One of those is fake.
I've never heard of Manfred Jackson.
I bet you we could open a phone book right now and find a Manfred Jackson.
I bet we could, but I do not think that was a Jackson 5.
Yeah, you're correct. There's no Manfred. There was a Michael Jackson. Maybe you've heard of him.
No. Michael who?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
All right, you know what we're going to do real quick? Jim Gorzolany, he's a fellow Midwest Automotive Media Association member, writes a lot for Forbes about cars.
Yes.
I just have a list here real quick. We're just going to go through of cars being discontinued soon.
Oh, yeah, because we are no longer doing our Deadpool.
No, we've only got like 3 minutes to get through like 12 cars.
You've got 6
I just need you to
minutes.
make some sort of oral acknowledgement, good or bad or whatever, kind of to each one. Are you ready?
Okay.
The Nissan GTR.
Aw.
Yeah, okay. That's their sports car. They only sold 390 last year. They only sold 57 the year before.
I loved the GTR.
Yeah, it's a little extreme.
It
Hard
is.
to drive around here. Audi R8. That would be Audi's sports car that shared a drivetrain with the Lamborghini Huracan.
Womp womp.
That's gone.
Sad.
Camaro. We knew that.
Yeah, I'm not so sad about that one.
Yeah, Malibu. Really, this time?
For reals.
I think for 4 years we were talking about the Malibu.
The
being
death
dead.
of the Malibu.
This one's interesting. I'd never heard this before, and I didn't have time to dig around and corroborate this. The Durango. The Dodge Durango.
That makes sense to me.
Being replaced by a vehicle called the Stealth.
That I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
All right.
Now I'm going to have to look into that.
This is interesting. The Ford Edge is going away.
Yeah, I think I knew that.
You would think a Ford two-row midsize crossover would have some sales momentum, and I think it does. But that factory is Oakville Assembly in Canada, moving all EV.
Yeah.
Which is why the Nautilus got moved to China.
Yeah, I feel like I heard Escape might even be going away.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's going away, too. Actually,
Is that all?
I think it's on my list. Yes, Escape going to ...
Yeah.
Oh, this one I didn't know. Genesis G70.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that either.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense because their SUVs are really taking center stage and they're doing a lot more with EV.
Yeah. They launched that brand with sedans, and that launch was painful and slow.
Yeah, but I loved the G70. I actually just had the G70.
I did too.
And in that beautiful gray color. I think it was like something gray.
Was that the 6 or the 4?
It was the 6.
I had the 4, which is plenty.
Yeah,
Actually,
no,
it's
the
plenty
6
quick.
was amazing.
All right, Jeep Renegade and Jeep Cherokee. We just talked about those.
Yeah.
No one cares. The Mitsubishi Mirage and Mirage G4 sedan.
I didn't even know that was still there.
I thought they were gone anywhere. The G4 sedan was gone.
Yeah, I thought they were gone a long time ago.
Nissan Titan, we knew. And then finally, this one surprised me, but I guess it had to happen. Subaru Legacy.
Oh.
We just talked about the Subaru Outback.
Yeah.
Outback is basically a legacy wagon on steroids.
Yeah, the Legacy, what I love about Subaru sedans is the fact that they were all-wheel drive. And they were among the first all-wheel drive sedans you could get.
You and I have a common acquaintance who was shopping for a car for his son who became driving age.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking at the Outback.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Outback, I'm sorry, the Subaru Crosstrek. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
But they're very small, all-wheel drive looking. And they were shopping for that, and they got such a good deal. They were distracted by a sale on the Legacy that they moved into the bigger vehicle for less money. So there you have it. All right, guess what we did?
We talked too much. Or we talked just enough.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Big thanks to Joe Ligo of the Last Independent Automaker. Visit us on Facebook, the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Facebook page. We will link to all that stuff, including this GoFundMe thing.
Yes.
So that's there. Thank you, Jill. Thanks to producer Randy and the good folks here at TalkZone. Okay, let's talk more about cars again.
Next week.
Next week.
Remember to check us out at consumerguide.com.
The Car Stuff Podcast is produced by J-Turn Media.
To advertise on the show, please drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.